It's 7:30 in the evening across India. I am Tanvi Taneja. We are live from New Delhi and you're watching DD India Global. We'll bring you all the day's big stories from across India and the world. With me today from Washington, D.C. is my colleague Kate Fisher. Hi, Kate.
Good morning, Tanvi. It's 10 a.m. here in Washington, D.C. and 4 in the afternoon across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Here in Washington, the race is on for who will be the next Speaker of the House after Kevin McCarthy was ousted from the job by members of his own party. The role's second in line to the presidency after the Vice President. 75,000 healthcare workers are striking across the US over staff shortages. And we're in New York for the trial of Sam Bankman-Fried, the man behind one of the largest crypto exchanges in the world. But first, let's get the headlines from Tanvi.
European leaders rally for Ukraine at the European Political Community Summit in Spain. Zelensky tells Europe Russia will attack others if Ukraine loses. Latest Russian attack kills at least 49 people, including a 6-year-old boy, in a village in northeast Ukraine's Kharkiv region. India slams Canada's continuing interference in domestic affairs, seeks parity in diplomatic staff presence. And at the Hangzhou Asian Games, India's medal rush continues with gold medals in squash mixed doubles and archery compound men's and women's team events. Around 47 European heads of state and government are at the southern Spanish city of Granada for a meeting of the European political community. As the migrant crisis escalates, the European Union member states reached a preliminary agreement on establishing common rules to tackle a massive influx of asylum seekers. The proposed crisis regulation outlines rules for further negotiations and to make the changes legally binding before next year's EU elections. The new rule will allow frontline states to fast-track asylum applications and move people swiftly to other countries in Europe. More from the EPC summit on in Granada, Spain. Kosovo's president called on Spain, the biggest EU state, to withhold recognition of Kosovo's independence, to join other countries backing measures to punish Serbia over a deadly gun battle between Kosovo forces and armed Serbs last month. Further, Kosovo leader said at the Granada summit that Serbia's place is not in the EPC.
I don't think Serbia's place is in the European political community. Of course, this is going to be an issue that needs to be decided by those who have started this initiative, which we in Kosovo have supported, are one of the founding and equal members of this initiative. However, this is a table for like-minded countries who believe in peace, who believe in stability, who defend European values. Serbia, unfortunately, is not one of them. Whoever had any doubt that they might be, they were convinced on the 24th of September that this is a country that wants to attack not just its neighbors, but also wants to attack the values-based system that the European Union and NATO and organizations such as the EPC represent.
Meanwhile, Spain's acting Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has anticipated challenges over European Union's enlargement plan. He said although the expansion of 8 new members would cause many challenges internally, but Spain is open to such enlargement.
We are opening in Granada the big debate that will lead us to a deep reform of the European Union so that we can expand in next years, so we can be European Union of 27 to a union of 35 members. And that will take a lot of internal challenges in order to remain being effective and to be able to embrace those countries which are knocking the door for a long time in this common project that is European Union.
Next news from Asia now. India's External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Arindam Bagchi on Thursday said that India's focus remains on achieving parity in terms of diplomatic presence and asked Canada to reduce its diplomatic staff in the country.
Their continuing interference in our internal affairs, we have sought parity in our respective diplomatic presence. Discussions are ongoing on the modalities of achieving this. As we mentioned, I think last week, given that Canadian diplomatic presence is very much higher, we would assume that there would be a reduction.
Briefing media, Bagchi also asserted that India has taken up the security issue of diplomats with the United Kingdom and raised concern about their safety.
In the UK, there was a protest on 2nd October, and we certainly have taken up our concerns on the security of diplomats and premises there with the UK authorities, and this has been ongoing thing. The issue is about security, about ensuring that our diplomats are able to function normally and our premises are safe and that the community is not targeted.
The MEA spokesperson further added that India is in touch with Afghanistan diplomats and its embassy in New Delhi is continuing to function days after the embassy announced that it was suspending operations.
The embassy in New Delhi is functioning or continuing to function. We are in touch with the Afghan diplomats who are there in that embassy, as well as with the Afghan diplomats who are at the consulates in Mumbai and Hyderabad. However, we received a communication last week purportedly from the embassy indicating that it intends to suspend operations at the end of September, I think it was. So, of course, such a decision is an internal matter of a foreign mission. However, we have noted that the Afghan consulates general in Mumbai and in Hyderabad voiced their objection to that decision or to such a decision. We are also aware of that there has been a prolonged absence of the ambassador, and that a large number of Afghan diplomats have left India in recent past. With the students, we would hope that the substantial number of Afghan nationals in India, including students, are able to continue to receive necessary consular support.
Still with India, at least 14 people have died and over 100 remain missing after a cloudburst over a glacial lake triggered flash floods in the northeastern Indian state of Sikkim. 22 Indian Army personnel are among the people reported to be missing. According to a statement by an Indian official in the capital of the adjoining state of Assam, all other Indian Army personnel posted in Sikkim and northern West Bengal are safe, but are unable to contact their family members because of disruptions in communication. Meanwhile, the situation is particularly dangerous in the Teesta River basin. Teams of India's National Disaster Response Force are trying to evacuate over 3,000 tourists stranded in flood-hit areas. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke to Sikkim Chief Minister Prem Singh Thamang and assured all possible support in tackling the disaster. And on your screens now are the helpline numbers issued by the Indian Army for Eastern Sikkim, Northern Sikkim, and for any information on the missing people. So after the cloudburst in Sikkim, the flood situation has started worsening in different pockets of northern West Bengal, with the most affected being Darjeeling and Kalimpong in the hills, and Jalpaiguri and Alipurdwar in the plains of Terai and Duar regions. The situation was reported to be critical in 3 other districts in North Bengal as the Teesta River started swelling following flash floods in the hills of neighbouring Sikkim. Over 10,000 people have been rescued from low-lying areas. They are currently living in 190 relief centres across 9 districts. Parts of the national highway connecting Sikkim's capital Gangtok and West Bengal's Silguri have been washed away. West Bengal Governor C.V. Anand Bose, who visited the disaster-hit areas on Thursday, called the situation very disturbing and uncertain. Further, the leaves of local officials have been cancelled so that the disaster relief operations are not hampered. India's services sector strengthened further in September, witnessing strongest output in 13 years. India's S&P Global Services PMI stood at 61 in September, up from 60.1 in August. The reading was above the 50 mark, separating growth from contraction for the 26th consecutive month. India's services sector activity expanded in September, with new orders rising at the second fastest rate since June 2010, as per the S&P Global India Services Purchasing Managers Index. And on to America now. Republican leader Kevin McCarthy became the first ever U.S. House Speaker to be removed from office. Republicans are now looking for options after McCarthy's ouster. My colleague Kate Fisher is in Washington, D.C. She gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Kate, tell us, who are the top runners for the post of U.S. House Speaker?
Well, despite calls from some Republicans for former President Donald Trump to go for the job, so far only 2 Republicans have put their names forward, and they are Steve Scalise, the chamber's #2 Republican, and Jim Jordan, a leading antagonist of Democratic President Joe Biden. And the 2 lawmakers, though, they could be joined by several other candidates in what might end up being a lengthy and messy battle to fill the post in the House, where Republicans hold the majority. Tuesday's unexpected removal of McCarthy, driven by a rebellious group of fellow Republicans, marked the first time that the chamber has removed its leader from a position that is second in line to the president, just after the vice president. Republicans have set an 11th of October vote to choose a successor, and they're due to meet the day before to hear from candidates. DD India's William Denslow reports from New York.
Well, we're certainly starting to see it take some form of shape with the fact that we now have 2 people that have officially entered the race to be the next House Speaker, something that many analysts and pundits are describing somewhat as a poison chalice, considering what happened to Kevin McCarthy. So this is not expected to be an easy race at all. If we cast our minds back to when Kevin McCarthy took on the role to be House Speaker, it took him 5 days, some 15 rounds or so of voting to finally be elected to the job. So this isn't expected to be a formality. When it comes to the 2 candidates, as you pointed out, we have Steve Scalise. He's been the House Majority Leader, so that makes him the natural successor, perhaps. But there was no love lost between Kevin McCarthy and Steve Scalise, so that is not a slam dunk there. He has had experience as a chief whip for the Republicans, so certainly has experience trying to get the party together. As far as Jim Jordan is concerned, well, he's seen far more of a firebrand among the Republican Party. He is very prominent in the MAGA faction, the Trump-supporting faction of the Republican Party. He's been very vocal in defending the former president in his impeachment inquiries, and of course, he is leading the way when it comes to the impeachment inquiries against Joe Biden. So he will likely be very popular among the likes of Matt Gaetz, that pushed for McCarthy to be ousted. But whether he can bring more centrist parts of the Republican Party together, that will be a major question.
More than 75,000 healthcare workers are taking industrial action in one of the largest walkouts in their industry in US history. Workers at care consortium Kaiser Permanente are striking after failing to resolve a dispute over staffing numbers. Those walking off the job are nurses, technicians and support staff at hospitals and clinics across the country. The coalition of unions representing the workers say that the company failed to address an ongoing staffing crunch that has left workers feeling overworked and underpaid.
Yeah, we're out here because we want the world to know that Kaiser's being unfair to us. They're not treating us right. We're working through the pandemic. We're working through hard times. We're understaffed, underpaid. They're not giving us what we need to take care of our patients properly. So we're out here to let the world know that they need to respect us and they need to recognize that the service that we provide to our patients.
Well, DD India's Caroline Malone has more on this from Washington, D.C.
This is the largest healthcare workers' strike in US history. Around 75,000 people taking part in protests against the major company, healthcare employee company Kaiser. Now, we're on day 2 on Thursday of these protests that may go on for 3 days, according to unions. In Washington, D.C. and Virginia, it's mainly pharmacists and optometrists who took part on Wednesday on day one. But across the country, there are major specialties and different medical areas, doctors, nurses, admin workers taking part, pushing for better wages and better conditions. But the unions that represent them say that actually talks have been suspended with Kaiser because no progress is being made. At the end of Wednesday, Caroline Lucas, the spokesperson for the union, said that frontline healthcare workers are still waiting a meaningful response from executives because some of their key priorities of safe staffing, outsourcing protections and fair wages haven't yet been met. Now, this is part of a wider picture of staffing shortages, really, in the healthcare industry since the COVID-19 pandemic. Many doctors and nurses left their jobs after that time, and also at a time of high inflation that was particularly experienced in the United States and across the world last year. Employees for the company told me that they used to feel like they worked for the best healthcare company and that they were appreciated. But now they're not, and they're still doing that very important frontline healthcare work. Caroline Malone in Washington for DD India.
To New York now, and the first witnesses have taken the stand in the trial of FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried. Proceedings are underway in a Manhattan courthouse, and they're expected to last several weeks. Bankman-Fried, who is the man behind one of the largest crypto exchanges in the world, faces 7 criminal charges. He's accused of using customers' money to fill holes in his hedge fund, Alameda Research. Bankman-Fried has pleaded not guilty to all of the charges. DD India's Sally Patterson has more on this from New York.
One of the first witnesses to take the stand in Sam Bankman-Fried's case, Adam Yedidiah, quit the week FTX declared bankruptcy. He was a developer for the crypto exchange and actually one of the defendant's close friends. Asked by the prosecution why he was testifying with an immunity order, which basically protects witnesses from prosecution themselves, Yedidiah said, "I was concerned that as a developer for FTX, I may have unwittingly written a code that contributed to a crime." His former boss is charged with a host of crimes, including wire fraud and also money laundering. He's accused of using billions of dollars worth of customers' money for his own benefit and also plugging cash into the hedge fund he set up, Alameda Research. After more than a day of jury selection, which saw almost 50 potential members whittled down to just 12 plus 6 backups, on Wednesday the trial really got going with opening statements. First, the prosecution. Lawyers drew an image of the lavish lifestyle they said the defendant had lived. A penthouse in the Bahamas, private jets, hanging out with celebrities and politicians. But all of that, they said, was built on lies. They said Bankman-Fried was using his company, FTX, to commit fraud on a massive scale. Bankman-Fried's lawyer, Mark Cohen, painted a very different portrait in his own opening statement. He said Sam didn't defraud anyone. Sam didn't intend to defraud anyone. Sam acted in good faith, he said. Far from the, quote, villain that he was portrayed as by prosecutors, he was instead a maths nerd who didn't drink or party. That's at least according to his own team. And the downfall of FTX, the lawyers claim, was caused by inexperience and ultimately the former CEO of Alameda Research, Caroline Ellison. She's also Bankman-Fried's ex-girlfriend and has already pleaded guilty herself to fraud. She's been cooperating with the prosecution ever since. The case continues. Sally Patterson in New York, reporting for DD India.
As tensions between Russia and Ukraine continue to escalate, a Russian attack has killed at least 49 people, including a 6-year-old boy, in a village in the Kharkiv region of northeast Ukraine. Ukrainian officials posted footage of rescue workers going through the rubble looking for any survivors. The governor of Kharkiv region said that a cafe and a shop had been attacked at around 10:15 GMT, and many civilians were there, and that's what has led to the high number of casualties. Russia has planned and signed a deal for a permanent naval base on the Black Sea coast of the breakaway Georgian region of Abkhazia. As per reports, Russia has withdrawn large parts of its Black Sea fleet from its main base in Crimea due to continued Ukrainian attacks. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's expressed confidence in America's continued financial support, and he's asked for more arms to help him fight against Russian aggression. Zelensky said that Russian President Vladimir Putin should not be allowed to beef up his military, or else Russia could even attack beyond Ukraine.
We have to win in Ukraine so that Putin cannot scale this aggression to someone else, and it is realistic. That's why the key things are our unity. The unity and solidarity of all of our Europe must be unwavering. The unity of all 27 EU countries, all the Europe.
Well, this comes as here in Washington, US President Joe Biden has expressed concern over the delivery of American aid to Ukraine. Joe Biden said he was worried that Republican infighting could hurt Ukraine's aid and said that there are a majority of lawmakers in both parties that support it. He promised to deliver a speech soon to outline why the US needs to continue to support Ukraine in its war against Russia.
It does worry me, but I know there are a majority of members of the House and Senate in both parties who have said that they support funding Ukraine. With your, I'm going to be announcing very shortly a major speech I'm going to make on this issue and why it's critically important for the United States and our allies that we keep our commitment. We can support Ukraine in the next tranche that we need, and there is another means by which we may be able to find funding for that, but I'm not going to get into that now.
That's all from me here in Washington. Back now to Tanvi in New Delhi.
Thank you very much, Kate, for joining us all here in New Delhi. Kate Fisher joining us all the way from Washington, D.C. You're watching DD India Global, still to come on the show. Princess of Wales, Kate Middleton, shows off her sporty side as she tried her hand at wheelchair rugby. Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. In a remarkable development, India and the UAE have partnered to introduce the domestic card scheme in the Gulf nation. India's NPCI International Payments Limited has partnered with the UAE's Al Ittihad Payments to introduce the RuPay card in the UAE. The agreement aims to boost financial inclusion and the UAE's competitiveness in the payments sector. RuPay, India's card network, with over 750 million cards in circulation, will underpin the UAE's domestic card scheme. The signing ceremony was witnessed by Piyush Goyal, India's Minister of Commerce and Industry, and Sheikh Hamid bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Managing Director of Abu Dhabi Investment Authority. The Indian Navy has released its indigenization roadmap named Swavalamban 2.0. In an exclusive conversation with DD India's Shubhendu Ghosh, India's Chief of Naval Staff, Admiral R. Harikumar, shares an update on what has been achieved so far.
We are at Swavlamban 2.0, a unique exhibition of indigenous Indian defense technologies and the exhibition of the manner in which startups and MSMEs are taking it forward. I have with me India's Chief of Naval Staff, Admiral R. Hari Kumar. Welcome to DD India, sir. Now, we know that Navy has set the target of 2047 to become Atmanirbhar in defense technologies. How far have we come and how significant is a forum like Swavlamban for that?
We have come quite a long way. If you see our ships, out of 68 ships which are under construction today, 66 are being built in India. So only 2 ships which are being built outside, and hereafter no more ships will be built outside. All ships will be built, ship submarines. In fact, we are looking at all aircraft also to be built in India. That is why seminars like this, Swavlamban, are very important. We had given 75 challenges last time, and now you see the response from the industry was tremendous. We got about 1,108 responses, many of them so moto from them. And then we shortlisted some of them which were useful, signed over 118 contracts, and many of these technologies are very good. They are proving themselves.
What kind of opportunities are being created for smaller businesses, MSMEs, and startups who are really leading the innovation charge in the country?
We are giving all the opportunity for the small companies, startups, and so on. Because if you see the IDEX Sprint, that gives financial support for about 1.5 crores, and the IDEX Prime gives about 10 crores of support for the initial funding support. And with that itself, we have been able to sign 118 contracts, and many of these are technology which is cutting edge, which has got application not just for our Navy. I mean, subsequently, probably they will be able to export as well.
Admiral Kumar, thank you very much for speaking with DD India. With camera person Rajesh Sharma, Shubhendu Ghosh for DD India in New Delhi.
And now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. Israeli soldiers killed 2 Palestinians during a clash with gunmen in West Bank region on Thursday. 2 Palestinians were in a car who fired at an Israeli vehicle near the town of Tulkarm. Princess of Wales Kate Middleton showed off her sporty side as she took part in a wheelchair rugby training session during her visit to a sports centre in Hull in northeast of England. Kate took part in the Rugby League Inclusivity Day in her royal role as patron of the Rugby Football League. The 2023 Nobel Prize in Literature has been awarded to Norwegian author Jon Fosse for his innovative plays and prose which give voice to the unsayable. The 64-year-old Fosse writes in a version of the Norwegian language that is used by only about 10% of Norway's population. And it's raining medals for India at the 19th edition of the Asian Games underway in China. India is at number 4th position with 21 golds on day 12. India bagged gold in archery and squash events. The trio of Jyoti Sureka Vennam, Aditi Gopichand and Parneet clinched gold medal in the compound team event. India beat Chinese Taipei in finals 230-229 to win the historic gold. In men's compound archery team event, India beat Korea to win the gold in the compound team event. In squash, Deepika Pallikal and Harinder Pal Singh won gold in mixed doubles squash event. The duo eked out a 11-10 win over Aifa Binti Azman and Mohammad Sayafiq bin Mohammad Kamal in 35 minutes. And that's all in this edition of DD India Global. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram at DD India Live. You can also find us online at ddindia.co.in. We will be back tomorrow with more editions of DD India Global at 5 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. I am Tanvi Taneja from my entire team in New Delhi. Thanks for watching. Namaskar.